Stardust, Chapter 34, Part 2. 6 p.m., May 27, 2015. Briefing room, beta site.
So, why are we here again?
Lena asked the room in general, and was rewarded with several blank stares in her direction. The surviving members of Strike 1 were all present. The recently recovered Robert Sachs sat behind Zhang at the end of the row, and both appeared to be sleeping. To Lana's left were Jack Finch, Patrick Carlock, Holly Blake, and Clara Burns, giving each other doubtful looks. In the next row, Captain Fujikawa and Yuri Romalov sat with equally confused expressions. "You don't know? You're the most senior member of Strike 1 in the room," Finch asked before turning behind him. "Do you know anything about this, sir?"
I'm afraid not,
Fujikawa answered with a shrug.
All I know is that the meeting was arranged by the commander, so it must be important.
The door to the briefing room opened, and Commander Bradford stepped in with Matt following behind. The room's occupants rose and saluted, Zhang and Sachs included, and all resumed their seats as the salutes were returned. "At ease. You've all been gathered for a very important operation that will commence shortly. Participation is strictly voluntary, but what you will learn in this room is considered classified at the highest levels, and any leak will result in..." Bradford drifted off, and a look of consternation appeared on his face. "Lieutenant, you'll have to continue the briefing." Surprise was obvious on Matt's face as he took Bradford's place at the front of the room. Just as he started to speak, the intercom buzzed.
Commander, to the Situation Room.
Before the request had finished, he had already exited the briefing room. Matt cleared his throat to regain the initiative. "I won't repeat the commander's warning. We all know the disclosure penalties by now. Everyone in the room took part in the defense of the old base 5 days ago, and I'm certain everyone here either saw or heard of the unicorn that was encountered as well." Matt produced a remote control, and the wall monitor behind him flickered to life, and several pictures of the base defense appeared as well as several pictures taken from Matt's own armor camera back in April. "During the final moments of the operation, she was wounded and is now in critical condition, which could fail at any moment."
What's going on, Matt?
Lena asked silently, and both she and Zhang shared a glance. "Our mission will be to return this creature to its homeworld," Matt answered Lena's unspoken question, and he paused to let the statement sink in. "Why?" Finch blurted out. "I'm more interested in the how," Sachs answered with an arched eyebrow. "Unless the thing came from the moon, I have to wonder how we'll get there." To answer the first question, Matt spoke as he raised his hands to motion for silence. "She isn't affiliated with the invaders in any way, and she did not originate from whatever world or worlds they come from. She's also highly placed within the ruling power structure of her world, with both personal and professional ties to at least 2 of her species that have exponentially greater capabilities. These beings are also aware of her presence, if not her current location, and they would know the moment she dies. I should also point out that the cause of her current condition is from being shot by one of our weapons." Matt didn't continue, but the implication was clear.
Where's the lackwit who shot her? I remember security taking him off our hands, and I haven't heard anything since,
Lena stated. "I don't know, and it's not relevant at this juncture," Matt shrugged. To answer the second question, Charles Shannon Engineering has created a teleportation device that is capable of sending anyone who uses it to a different location. The monitor pictures switched to a massive chamber with an elevated circular platform and a corresponding circular pad above it. An initial test involved sending a shiv to the alien world, where it would begin recording its surroundings before activating its Homer beacon to return here. The shiv returned successfully, and with video evidence to confirm the location was correct.
Can we see the video the shiv took?
Fujikawa asked. "Well, it's still undergoing review, sorry." The reaction was well hidden, but Lena knew Matt well enough to recognize that he deliberately dodged the question. "I'm now asking for volunteers to assist me with this operation. A minimum of 3 is preferred for a half squad, or 7 for a full squad in addition to me." Lena was already rising from her chair before Matt had finished his explanation, and she was pleasantly surprised to see Zhang follow shortly afterwards. A glance behind her revealed that Romalov was standing as well, though Fujikawa looked conflicted.
I can't volunteer,
the Major said with sincere regret.
I'm currently the highest ranking strike team officer, and I can't be away until things settle down. I can wish you luck, though.
A moment passed before Sack slowly rose to his feet, and a grin crept on his face. Burns, Blake, and Carlock followed shortly afterwards, and Finch was the last to stand, but the hesitation that once was on his face was gone. 8:50 a.m., May 29th, 2015, Kaleidoscope Chamber.
Twilight, we got a surprise for you.
Matt heard Lana say as she walked alongside the stretcher that the unicorn now rested in.
Just hang on for a little bit longer, okay?
Zhang led the column and held the front portion of the stretcher, while Romalov carried the rear portion, and Lana and Matt walked along each side of the stretcher as they ascended the ramp to the massive plateau in the center of the room. The rest of the volunteers had already assembled on the plateau, and were in full armor with a variety of rifle weaponry. Over half were carrying projectile weapons, with several clips wrapped in blue or red tape, while Finch, Blake, and Jenkins carried laser rifles. Several flashbang and smoke grenades were also seen on every one of the soldiers. Matt himself carried a flare gun in place of his usual sidearm. Burns was in the process of double-checking both her and Finch's gear as Finch checked their weapons. Blake and Carlock huddled together over a tablet to review the mission information one last time. Zack stood as still as a statue awaiting orders, and all of them paused to look at Twilight was carried onto the teleporter.
5 minutes, gentlemen,
Shen called from the control booth. Alright, listen up, Matt said as he let his rifle dangle from its shoulder strap as he pulled up his own tablet. I know we went over all this earlier, but it bears repeating. The first teleportation test sent the Shiv to a field just outside of a rural population center. This is not intended to be a first contact scenario with these people. We'll approach the outskirts of the town and deploy flares to gather their attention. Once we're confident she's been noticed, we'll fall back to the teleport homer and be on our way back home, Matt summarized while pointing over his shoulder at the cylindrical device mounted on a tripod in the center of the platform. You're all professionals, so I know it's overkill for saying so, but you are not to engage the locals in any way. If they approach, then you fall back. If they're hostile, then warning shots or rubber bullets, he continued as he tapped the blue tape magazine on his rifle.
Wait, what about the hostile wildlife, sir?
Sax queried as he held up his own tablet that showed one of Twilight's drawings.
Some of those things from the briefing seem rather exotic.
Warning shots, and live ammo is needed. Any other questions?
Okay, how do we know the locals will take care of her when they see her?
Finch asked while stealing glances towards Twilight. She's a national hero to them. Someone will know her on sight. Anything else?
1 minute,
Shen's voice boomed from the intercom. The lights in the chamber dimmed slightly, and an intricate pattern of circuitry began to glow on the platform beneath them, as well as above them.
Places, people!
Matt shouted, and the soldiers all scattered to various positions around the perimeter of the platform. Matt, Lena, and Zhang formed an inner ring, with Twilight taking the last point. A digital clock on the far wall began to count the seconds until the teleporter activated. 30, 20, 10, 5. When the count reached 2, Matt sucked in a breath and closed his eyes, and immediately then doubled over as he fought the urge to vomit his breakfast onto the floor. He ripped his helmet off his head and took several deep breaths before things settled down enough for him to rise and looked over the rest of Strike 1. They had fared no better than Matt, as a good portion of them were now doubled over and showing varying degrees of illness.
Sound off! Sound off! Is everyone alright?
He asked as he turned his gaze to his surroundings.
Crap.
What he expected to see were the pastoral fields surrounding the sleepy little town that the Shiv had recorded, but instead, they found themselves inside some sort of ruin. What was likely a regal red carpet was now a decayed and faded rag beneath their feet, which led up a small flight of stairs where 2 thrones sat. Tapestries hung from the wall behind each throne with a clear sun and moon theme in both symbolism and coloration, but like the carpet, they suffered the ravages of time. At the opposite end of the carpeted walkway were double doors, one of which had fallen from its frame to expose a small glimpse of the scenery beyond the bleak stone walls. Shattered mirrors and stained glass windows lined those walls as well. Matt's gaze drifted upwards to the vaulted ceiling and took note of several holes in the ceiling that revealed the night sky. Once the soldiers had recovered enough to stand, Matt spoke up.
Insertion's off target. I can say for certain this is not our intended destination.
A burst of Sato Vo's profanity rippled through the soldiers.
We need to get the lay of the land if we're near any other population centers. Zhang, Blake, Burns, see if you can find any upper-level vantage point and report any landmarks.
Romalov, Sax, Finch, I want you two to stay here and guard the teleport Homer and her. Matt pointed to the stretcher and the devices set up beside her. Lana, Karlach, Romalov, you're with me. We're gonna take a look outside. Short-range comms are still active, so shout if you see anything. The group broke up and Matt slipped his helmet back on before stepping outside. Oh, well, that was quick. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have our identifying landmark, he said as he caught sight of a massive mountain that sat all by its lonesome, with nothing but plains as far as the eye could see. A castle was perched precariously along the side of the mountain, and dozens of sparkling lights could be seen surrounding its base. Any other details were obscured as cloud cover blotted out the moon as it sank on the western horizon, while the eastern horizon had just begun to brighten. It's twilight. No, it's the dawn.
Well, hot damn, look at that castle!
Lana said, and Matt could hear the grin in her voice.
I'm so taking the armor camera footage to Charles when we get back. I'll bet $20 that his response involves the word impossible.
Focus! Matt hissed before addressing the squad. We're heading back to pick up the package. There should be a village on the other side of the woods where we can get her help. Romalov, you and me are on stretcher duty. Zhang, Blake, Burns, Sax, stay here and hold down the fort. Everyone else is moving out. Matt and Romalov lifted the stretcher with ease, and the group set off. After crossing a shaky rope bridge and passing through the thick of the forest, the group finally broke through to a clearing. Some time had passed as the night sky was already brightening with the approaching dawn. They put a good 50 feet between themselves and the forest before Matt called for them to halt. Alright, watch for any movement. If you see any locals, call them out as you see them, Matt said as he lowered the stretcher to the ground before shrugging the pack from his shoulders and placing it beside the unconscious unicorn. Twilight, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but you're going to be home and with your friends really soon. I even brought your stuff from the lab. When Twilight didn't respond, he reached forward to rub her head, but hesitated. The hand retracted and fell into the flare gun at his hip, which he drew and loaded. Matt had raised the flare gun to fire it when he felt the warmth of the sun upon him as it broke the horizon. It was such a natural phenomena that it took him a moment to realize that he was feeling it through his armor.
God damn, who turned on the spotlight?
Lana cursed as she raised a hand to supplement the already significant shielding built into her helmet. Sir, I have movement. Something just launched from the castle. Karlach had a pair of binoculars pointed in the direction indicated, and it took a moment's worth of squinting for Matt to identify just what he had spotted. Confirmed, the White Princess is incoming, and she looks pissed. Sir, I think now would be a good time to leg it, Finch suggested as he edged his way back towards the tree line. Sweat was starting to form on Matt's forehead as he made his decision. Move it, people! Double time it back to the ruins! He ordered as he turned and ran full tilt into the woods. He had almost entered the tree line when he looked over his shoulder to see the princess's descent. Her landing was followed by a wave of heat and a flash of golden light, and Matt looked back to the path he was now cutting in between the trees. A shout and a battle cry could be heard behind him, and the sound of many hooves as well. Karlach! Jenkins! Flashbangs! Matt shouted, and the two soldiers in the lead of the retreat both turned and hurled their grenades behind them.
Don't stop running, and don't look back!
Lana yelled as she suited action to words. The two grenades detonated on the path behind them, and the sounds of what was likely profanity and metal clattering could be heard in the distance. Zhang! Harris! Get the teleporter Homer prepped! We're coming in hot! Are the ruins secured? For a moment, Zhang replied with a degree of calm that was at odds with the current situation. I don't mean to alarm anyone, but I believe Luna's circling the forest with a flock of Pegasi guards. The rope bridge in the clearing in front of the ruins may present a challenge. God damn it, more complications. What else could possibly go wrong? Matt fumed silently before continuing. Zhang, keep an eye out on their air support. If we activate the chameleon armor just as we break the tree line, we might be able to lose them. What's the time on the teleport, Homer? 10 minutes. Okay, we'll be there in 30 seconds, and our pursuit in little more than that unless we can lose them. Damn it. Okay, get us started, we'll be there momentarily, Matt shouted as he caught sight of the rope bridge. Do not engage and stay out of sight. Chameleon armor now! Matt immediately lost sight of the other soldiers running through the forest, but their electronic ICC tags still popped up on his helmet visor. Jenkins and Karlach were the first to run full tilt over the bridge, and both dropped on the other side while drawing their knives. Romalov and Finch crossed next, and Matt was the last to reach the other side. The moment his feet touched solid ground, both Karlach and Jenkins severed the ropes and let the bridge fall into the chasm below. Matt had made it nearly 3/4 of the way between the gorge and was starting to feel a little bit better about his odds when a shout louder than the voice of God hit him with something bordering on concussive force. He stumbled but quickly recovered as he bolted through the door, and the others headed towards the beacon in the center of the call. Matt caught sight of the others as they crouched in cover, and the damnable counter on the teleport homer reading 9 minutes and 34 seconds. He had just enough time to turn back to the door when several things happened simultaneously. The remaining door flew off its hinges and shot towards the retreating humans and the teleport beacon, and Luna stood on the other side in all her terrible glory, while surrounded by at least a dozen armored equestrians that dwarfed Twilight in both size and bulk. The moment the door flew off its hinges, the guards began to charge. A trio of Pegasi wearing blue and gold descended from one of the holes in the ceiling like birds of prey. Finch tripped and fell, but twisted onto his back to fire his laser rifle at the stampede that was bearing down on him, while Blake fired hers at one of the descending Pegasi. In the moment, it took Matt to wonder why he was able to pick up so much occurring at one time. He found his answer. Time had frozen, and the scene was locked on that single moment. Several seconds passed in Matt's mind as the time freeze stretched far longer than anything he had ever experienced before. Until something happened. A whistle filled the now silent scene, and the sounds of uneven steps followed it. A creature unlike anything Matt has ever seen stepped into view and made its way to the door suspended halfway between the retreating humans and their attackers. It was tall, or long, and its serpentine body twisted and coiled in random directions as it surveyed the scene around it. Every part of its body was mismatched, with a cloven hoof, a talon, a lion's paw, and a reptilian claw, plus a bat and a bird wing composed its limbs, and 2 wildly different horns sat atop its head. It extended its lion paw and touched the door, and in a flash of light, the door was replaced with bananas. The mishmash creature casually peeled and ate each one before tossing them over his shoulder at random, though when he finished the last one, he stopped and pushed it at a half inch to the right with his cloven hoof. He then strode over to Finch and pinched the laser bolts that had just emerged from the barrel and snapped it off like a twig before grabbing the soldier's foot and hefting his frozen form up and onto his shoulder like a club. The creature began to pick at his teeth with a las bolt, and it slowly turned a sickly green color as he walked out of Matt's line of sight before appearing from the other side of his vision beside Blake and without Finch. His now free hand grasped the laser bolt that was a few feet from connecting with one of the Pegasi and bent it as easily as a paperclip while turning it just as green as the first. He then turned to the lead Pegasi and placed one claw on its leading hoof and shoved. The Pegasi began to spin in place like a top as Discord turned back to the humans. The unknown creature picked up each of the humans as though they were lawn ornaments and deposited them all around the teleport homer before he extended one finger to the homer itself. The number dropped from 9.5 minutes to 3 seconds. Matt watched as the creature surveyed his work before giving his teeth one final rake with his captured laser bolts. He turned back to the humans and giggled before tossing the laser bolt over his shoulder and snapping his fingers. The scene dissolved into chaos. The charging equestrians hit the carpet of banana peels and fell with a clatter of armor and shouted profanity, but not before launching no less than 3 peels directly into Luna's face. The princess herself let out what was likely a very unladylike curse of her own as she stumbled backward from the unexpected projectiles. The leading Pegasus stopped its spinning and collided midair with the second one in the formation. The third charged direction at the last moment to avoid the bent laser beam before dodging again as the beam reflected off a broken mirror shard and back into the room. The beam that Discord had tossed over his shoulder leapt into action and narrowly missed the now desperately evading Pegasus before reflecting back into the room like the first had. Dozens of reflections filled the room with green laser fire before one ill-timed dodge caused the last Pegasus to crash into the apparently very dizzy flight leader. Both laser bolts made one final reflection before striking the stained glass windows on opposite sides of the room and exiting the ruins entirely. Any further mayhem was cut off as the teleport homer activated and sent the humans back to Earth. The room was dark, and almost devoid of furniture, save for an almost featureless desk and chair. The room might have been mistaken for a long, forgotten office or storage room, were it not for the lack of dust, combined with a well-dressed man who stepped into the room. Out of long ingrained habit, he sat in the seat after straightening his tie. His posture was ramrod straight as he pressed a seemingly random spot on the desk before tapping in front of him as though he had a keyboard. The wall across from the desk flickered as power fed into a monitor hidden in the darkness. Text began to scroll as the system powered up. System activation. Login password required. 0. User authenticated. Establishing secure connection. Secure connection established. 0 is now in attendance. Current attendance includes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. All members in attendance. 0. Good evening, gentlemen. The reports of this month's extraordinary events have been forwarded to all relevant parties, which will now be discussed. Once each topic is discussed satisfactorily, we will move on to the next. There will not be a repeat of last month's meeting. A long moment of silence passed before 0 continued. 0. The first and most pressing topic on the agenda involves the human collaborators that were found in the alien base that was captured and the likelihood of their involvement in the subsequent infiltration and sabotage of the North American Alpha site. 1. The preliminary reports from Dr. Valen are mostly complete, and I'm willing to forgive the statements of those reports after what she endured. The reports detail widespread genetic modification and enhancement among the human corpses that were recovered at the alien base. The vast majority of the corpses had been positively linked to abductees from around the globe, just as Valen suspected, and I agree with her assumption that the aliens were using these abductees as lab rats to perfect their modifications and implants before applying them to the collaborators. 5. Some of the things Valen and the strike teams have reported seems beyond what could be achieved without total replacement of organs and tissues. How could they create such things from the ground up? Valen mentioned meld, but 1. Valen's report on the meld substance that was recovered from the base was incomplete, but meld itself is apparently composed of billions of nanomachines that I speculate could do the work that we saw on the traders. 2. It's intriguing to consider what we could do with our own troops once such a substance could be mastered, but 4. I'm much more interested in Charles Shen's suggestion of using the meld substance as a means of fabricating microscopic circuitry and machinery. With the other breakthroughs that were found this month, he feels that he can create a mechanized device that can mimic the human body to a degree that we've only seen in science fiction or video games. The arm that was created for one of the strike team operators is the proof of concept. 13. Speaking of breakthroughs, we need to talk about the Stardust project. 13 has been muted by 0. 0. That subject will be discussed at a later time, as will the meld substance. The current topic now is the nature of the human collaborators and the human captured at the Alpha site. 13 has been unmuted by 0. 13. Well, with that in mind, the surviving prisoners that were captured and secured all show signs of damage we associate with mind control. This brings up an unsettling possibility that the aliens are able to project their mental powers from a much greater distance than we thought possible. 16. Wasn't Valen in the process of interrogating one of their commanders when the base came under attack? Is it possible that there was a security breach that allowed it to escape and take control of the base personnel? 13. No. Valen's report is incomplete regarding the sectoid commander, but the rule breaker device prevented it from using any of its abilities once it had been secured, and the captive was purged as per standard policy the moment the base came under attack. 1. And what of Vide? Do we have any news on his current location? His body wasn't found among the dead after the battle, and the nature of the containment cell he was escorted to seems to indicate he either had helped to escape, or whatever freakish implants the alien gave him allowed to heal several broken bones in the span of minutes. 1 now displaying Vide Cell JPEG. 1. As you can see, all 3 security guards are dead, one from a broken neck, the other from a crushed throat, and the third appears to have died by violent manual tracheostomy. 11. What do you mean by manual tracheostomy? 1. His throat was ripped out by hand. Vide or his compatriots left a message in blood on the wall as well. We will be watching. I can only assume this is meant as a threat towards XCOM to undermine their efforts. 0. As much as I would like to believe it is a coincidence, we are all too careful to make such an assumption. Those were my exact words at the end of my discussion with Commander Bradford at the end of April. This message is directed at the Council as much as XCOM. Given the likelihood of communications being compromised, I ordered and implemented new security procedures to combat future leaks. 1. I'm also in the process of trying to figure out just where Vide came from. The electronic trail that authorized his entrance into the base, as well as the email that Bradford found that morning, both lead virtually nowhere. Whoever is responsible for this is very cautious. 0. Very good. Continue your investigation to locate the origins of this infiltrator and forward them immediately to Commander Bradford. XCOM's primary objective of protecting all human life is now rescinded, and any action up to and including lethal force is now authorized against Vide and any who aid him. The next subject is the melt substance that was recovered, and the potential it provides to us. 2. As much as I would love to see our soldiers go toe-to-toe with these traitors using meld to enhance their bodies, I'm afraid I would have to withdraw my recommendation of using it in this matter. With biological changes, we just don't know how it will affect our soldiers without the aliens' expertise in the field, and we can't risk the soldiers we currently have experimenting. 4. I recommend going forward with Shen's suggestion. The risks to personnel, both in the short and long term, seem significantly less than experimenting on our own soldiers. 0 has called for a vote. Proceed with Dr. Charles Shen's suggested use of meld. Yes votes, 17 total. No votes, 0 total. 0 abstain. Proposal accepted. 0. Excellent. The next order of business involves the creation and use of the Kaleidoscope chamber to return the subject of the Stardust project to its place of origin. 11. If I may, there is something I wanted to discuss in relation to this topic. Twilight Sparkle's participation in the defense of the Alpha Site. 0. Very well. Proceed. 11. I won't go through the report word for word, but I think the events of the base defense quite clearly show the consequences we might have brought on ourselves had certain decisions been made at the start of the month. Aside from the mechtoids and their shields, I was not able to find the one instance of an enemy being able to mount a modicum of defense against her powers, and even the mechtoids didn't last too long once she set her eyes upon them. 13. So, what you're saying is, I told you so? 11. You said it, not me. 0. Personal comments are not to be brought up in this meeting. 11. My point is, Twilight Sparkle described herself as in the top 1% of her species. Assuming she isn't astronomically ahead of the rest of her race in a manner similar to how she describes the princesses, we might have found an untapped resource for the war. 13. I feel inclined to remind you at this point that she was shot and nearly killed by a human before she was returned to her homeworld, and the after-action reports clearly indicate hostile intent upon her return. Part of me is surprised that we aren't getting flooded with reports of these equestrians appearing across the globe demanding blood. 2. On a related note, where's our wayward guardsman? From what I understand, he was swept up by the strike teams and thrown into a cell. 1. Captain Vic Spiegel is currently enjoying our hospitality, where we evaluate his usefulness to the XCOM project. He is officially listed as missing in action, presumed dead when his F-16 was shot down during the fight. I've made quite certain that he is informed of the foolishness of his actions. 16. So, what did we learn from the mission to Equestria? Surely the armor camera footage has been gone over with a fine-tooth comb, and every particle of dirt from their boot treads have been examined. 1. To use Valen's exact words, remarkably Earth-like. Not to cut you off, but what I am more concerned with is the state of the Shiv that came back after the first test. A Mark I Shiv spent exactly 10 minutes on that world, and came back with... well, the official report says, 1 cone-shaped party hat affixed atop the main camera by rubber band, 6 party blowers stuffed into the Gatling gun's barrels, approximately 2 pounds of shredded paper confetti, and a cupcake on top of one of the treads. 13. Wait, what? I glossed over the initial test reports. Is the Shiv's recording of its trip attached to the report? 1. Yeah, it is. I have no idea what happened. 1 minute the camera is panning across the nighttime terrain, then the next camera is covered by a party hat. A few seconds later, the teleport homer finished charging, and it was back in the Kaleidoscope chamber. I keep trying to come up with a logical explanation, and I fail. 15. I've viewed the footage also, and I'm stumped. But one thing that did not show up in the video that we need to discuss is Discord. 5. Discord? The meddler that sent Twilight here in the first place? He never shows up in either the Shiv or armor camera footage. 15. You're right. He didn't. But in the base psychologist's notes, there was specific mention of an event in which an entity matching Discord's description appeared and made several changes to the area just before the teleport armor's activation. If you go to the indicated timestamp in Lieutenant Harris's armor camera, there's the charging equestrians and a door flying at the camera. The next? Bananas and green laser beams everywhere. 2. Never in my life did I think I'd hear that phrase in this meeting. 15. I'll admit to thinking the same thing, but we aren't addressing the bigger question. Why would Discord do that? Why would he help the strike team escape? The argument could be made that he simply did it to thwart the efforts of the established government in an embarrassing way, but there's no such thing as coincidences this big. He sent Twilight to us, he also helped the strike teams flee. Why? What could he possibly have to gain from those two actions? Previous reports would have led me to believe that he would have actively hindered Twilight's return to her home. 1. Such speculation, I'm afraid, isn't going to do much good at this point without more information, though the surviving Stardust team members might have insight into that question. I would also suggest that a review be made of all video footage that has been taken since early April. If there's any inconsistencies, it might be another case of his interference. 7. What if he's been interfering for longer than that? How do we know he hasn't been interfering for ages? 13. Since no one asked, I feel I should, especially since we're getting a bit off topic. Did Commander Bradford make the right decision in expending resources to create the Kaleidoscope chamber on such short notice, then use it to give away our one and only unicorn specimen? Such a fate would be unfortunate, but just imagine what we could have learned from her after her passing. 1. I do admit, we could have learned much, but the risks would have been great, perhaps fatally so. They were able to send communication to Twilight through unknown means, and one specific communication mentioned an awareness of her current conditions. 13. I am inclined to agree, but I feel the question had to be asked. 1. So, are we in agreement that Commander Bradford's decision was the correct one? Any who disagree may now present their case. 0. It is my opinion that Commander Bradford's quick decision was in the best interest of the XCOM project, and while it may not have yielded any immediate benefit, it did prevent potential conflict from a third party. As the subject of the Stardust project is no longer available for study, I recommend its immediate closure. A new project will take its place to cultivate and expand the abilities of any XCOM personnel who show signs of the gift. Are there any questions? 0. This council is now adjourned. 1 by 1, the councilmen disconnected, and 0 followed suit. The moment the disconnected message appeared on the screen, he tapped another place on his desk before clasping his hands before him. Good evening, Commander. So those humans finally got to see Equestria. It's a shame that they had to leave on such short notice because, well, they were gonna get killed or attacked, whatever the case may be, but at least they're back safe. Anyway, I'd love to give a very special thank you to my awesome donators. Yoshi Super Saiyan 2, Peter Coulthard, Dash of Evergreen, Dresdon, Dospo, RuneScythe9852, CourierCruz CI, Dwight Cornel, Gagi, Secret Moon, Starlight Glimmer, David D. Sanchez, Trey, Pokekillerzach, SoulDragon, Britton, and Joe Pierce E. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one.